Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is Channel Vision editor Gerald Baldino here, and today we're featuring Bicom Systems for a presentation on ensuring communications continuity with Geo Redundancy. Your presenters today will be Patrice Bramont, Business Success Manager at Bicom Systems, and Product Owner Aida Yamak. Please stay tuned for a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can submit them through the Q&A portal located at the bottom of the Zoom platform. At this point, I'd like to turn the webinar over to the Bicom Systems team to begin.
Thank you, Jaron. Basically, I'm going to be Mr. Bad News today, or Mr. Drama in this webinar, as I will show you some examples of serious incidents that occurred in the past 10 years in the world. So sorry in advance for being so dramatic, but the purpose here is to highlight how we can better handle these kind of situations. So in the past 10 years also, we had various types of extreme weather episodes, such as the Hurricane Sandy in 2012 on the east coast of the USA. This one was so hard that the US network outage rate doubled after the hurricane compared to what it was before. And that is a national rate, so you can really imagine that it was huge on the east coast. Basically, it impacted everything with zero internet for 4 days, for instance. In California, in 2020, so more recently, we have these very strong wildfires. Numbers speaks for themselves here. I mean, it's been a very serious impact on everyone, as COVID forced people to work from home, and those homes has to be evacuated. And there are no reason to believe that these wildfires will not happen again in the future. Another example, in this case, last February, they faced the coldest month ever recorded in 70 years in Texas, even if this was not the first time it occurred. So they got the same in 2011, they got the same in 1989, even if this year was really, really extremely cold. So this extreme weather episode led to power outage and similar consequences at the other disaster. Basically, everything stopped. So we've seen some example of natural disasters, but other causes can impact ITSP businesses, like this data center fire that occurred last March in France. OVH is the leader in Europe in data centers, and all systems went down with significant data losses. Not to mention Microsoft in Ireland, which you would think would be well preserved from this kind of incident, right? So as you can see, it can happen to, well, to anyone, I guess. Okay, this webinar is not about cyber security, but cyber criminal attacks can lead to exactly the same kind of consequences as a natural disaster. Basically, your systems are down. In that kind of criminal attack that I'm showcasing now, you can have a decision. You also have a decision to make between basically losing a significant amount of data, which data could be sensitive and also made public, and have millions of dollars to pay. That's obviously not the kind of comfortable choice you'd like to make. Okay, about some real business impacts now. 4 days of outages costed $150 million to Delta Airlines, and I mean, I guess we can say that Delta is not exactly the average type of business in the US. Besides this example, we also have various impacts like, as I said previously, data losses, shortage of supplies when all systems are down. Basically, by not providing the service to your customer, you may also face some kind of legal consequences. All of that can lead to business interruption and sometimes even closures. So we're going to see now how we can deal with this kind of situation and help with business continuity. So I'm going to pass over the mic to my colleague Aida Yamak, our Serverware product owner, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the Geo Redundancy.
So again, welcome. My name is Aida Yamak, and I am the product owner for Serverware in Bicom Systems. As we have seen, the cost of data loss can be enormous for the business. So what is Geo Redundancy and how can Serverware as a product help? Simply put, Geo Redundancy feature is based on data redundancy. In other words, it keeps the data generated by services on 2 or more geographical locations. This is achieved by replication, which means sending a copy for each piece of data to storage on a remote location. I need to emphasize that this is not a real-time replication, meaning that data is not replicated to both or all locations simultaneously during operation of processing. This is rather scheduled to sync to the changes in designated time periods set by the user. Minimum replication period that the user can set in Serverware is 1 minute and maximum is 24 hours. Compare this to one other provider where both minimum and maximum replication periods are 24 hours. In case of a disaster in one of the locations, if all storage data of VPS is available on the second site, that means that services can be restored on computational resources of that second site. Serverware provides a handy graphical user interface that enables these operations to be performed in just a few clicks. The goal of Serverware replication is the high reliability of replicated data with minimum data shift. In other words, to keep the most recent good copy of data on the remote location. This is achieved by verifying each part of the data transferred and the integrity of the whole increment. The integrity of the increment is achieved by the use of the OpenZFS as a storage engine that uses Fletcher 4 integrity checksum. If there is anything wrong with the increment, it will fail and the previous one will be kept as the last good one. Additionally, Serverware Geo Redundancy can be configured to keep multiple recovery points. If the most recent replication cycle is not good to go, an older one can be used. When configuring replication, the user can pick which domains and VPSs will be replicated per each configured geolocation. Data replication transfer between geolocations is tunneled over encrypted TCP connection between the sites. This eliminates the requirement for encrypted VPN setup between locations and simplifies deployment of this feature in production. In addition to the data replication, Serverware provides an option to set up a series of monitoring tests. If any or all tests fail, it either triggers the notification to administrator or triggers the takeover of a previously defined takeover template. Effectively, this adds the ability to automate takeover of the services when one location is unavailable. So, a few words about Serverware. It is the only virtualization platform tailored to hosting telephony and unified communications in the cloud. It delivers a wide range of IP services and applications with 5 nines high availability, stability, and reliability for a maximum uptime. The platform is available in the standalone mirror and cluster editions, offering fault tolerance, high availability, as well as processing and storage scalability. Serverware 4 provides support of NVMe over TCP in the storage pool assembly. NVMe over TCP is a high performance storage networking protocol that offers much lower latencies, higher bandwidth, parallelism, much better efficiencies, and removes run link bottleneck. This feature that we are talking about today, Geo Redundancy, is currently in beta testing phase. The planned release date is July 21st with Serverware version 4.1. So we are really excited and happily waiting this release date. Thank you. If you have any comments or questions, we can proceed to Q&A.
All right. Thank you for the great presentation here. I think we can jump into the Q&A session. To kick things off, you just mentioned Geo Redundancy. We did have one question that came in about that. Can you just clarify, is the solution available now?
So the solution is currently beta tested, as I said just in previous slide. It will be widely available on 21st of July.
Excellent. Thank you.
Available to a portion of our customers who are beta testing at the moment.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. Another question here from a customer who has a firewall setting blocking ICMP. Do you have another method to monitor?
Yes, there are HTTP, HTTPS, TCP tests as well. So yeah, there is a wide range of internal tests to be completed. And also we will be working on some integrating with some external monitoring tools as well. But that is for future release, not for this initial one on the 21st of July.
Great, thank you. And is there any support for IPv6 in Serverware yet?
We are working on that. That is also to be released in some future versions, not 4.1, but I think the very next one.
Okay, got it. Now, is this the solution for PBXware Geo Redundancy?
Basically, through Serverware, we would, Serverware hosts PBXware. So with the Geo Redundancy of Serverware, you would have basically PBXware Geo Redundant as well. That's the point of Serverware Geo Redundancy, basically to provide PBXware available in case of a disaster.
Okay, and can you use Serverware 4.1 on AWS or Azure Cloud?
Actually, this no, it's not possible because Serverware is a virtualization platform on its own, so it kind of does not make sense.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Now, next question: will you be implementing this in your hosted platform? Is the next question.
Yes.
Good.
We will not be providing it as a service yet, but for our hosted customers, Geo Redundancy also will be an option.
Okay. And is there a way to verify the VPS integrity or test the environment on the backup host just to make sure it would be ready in case it's needed for failover?
Yes. I kind of covered that in the touched on it basically on the presentation as well, but yeah, short answer is yes. Probably would have to see it to know how it works. Yeah.
Thank you. And can Geo Redundancy will it run on Mirror version 2?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's a great question. So Geo Redundancy is available on all editions of Serverware, so standalone Mirror cluster. Because whichever edition you are using, you might want to have it also replicated to another location in case that location survives a disaster or is out of service. So yeah, it is available on all 3 editions.
Okay, thank you. And how is the failover handled? What level of automation or manual intervention is required in the event of a disaster in the primary location?
Okay, so what we have done with these site monitoring tests that I mentioned somewhere around the end of the presentation is basically you have these tests to monitor the activity, and in case one or all of them or some of them fail, basically it's up to the administrator to define what would be the response in case of a test failure. A response can be either to notify on certain level administrators, or both, or the combination of the both, or basically to initiate takeover by the defined takeover template. These takeover templates are defined again by the user, so there is this huge flexibility for you to say, okay, this is at this level I want this to be done. And in case you have the template defined to basically take over on another location, that's the level of automation that you would have.
Okay, and does Serverware handle the movement of IP address ranges when a VPS is moved?
So we also have done worked on virtual networks. They will not be released with 4.1, but I believe 4.2 version, so right the next one, where you would have basically with the virtual networks, you will also have a DNS server within Serverware that would handle also the IP addresses, basically. And basically with the domain name, you would handle the VPSs, not their IP addresses. So that's how you would do it.
Excellent, excellent. Loving these questions that are coming in. Keep them coming. Next one here. What is the recommended interval? Is 1 minute okay for a busy system?
This is basically up for, again, you have this flexibility to set it up yourself. It depends on the volume, and it depends on of the data, and it depends on the necessity business need, basically on your side. If you say for us an hour or 5 hours or whatever is enough, that's what you would set up. You have a range from 1 minute to 24 hours to set it up, and basically the parameters are, as I said, data volume and your business need, where you would say, okay, for me, data shift of 5 minutes is good enough, so that I would accept, to lose the last 5 minutes in case of a disaster and take over from 5 minutes ago. Basically, a decision up to you.
Okay, thanks. And how?
But what I would like to say is that the replications is incremental. So all these increments are just as an increment. So the data loss, data transfer is limited just to this increment, and also there is a possibility to limit the storage and bandwidth, basically on the amount, how much you want to or able to replicate.
Okay, and how many concurrent calls can be used with a cluster 3 host cluster?
I will have to check that and get back to you, but I have seen some huge numbers, but I'll check that. I suppose it also depends on the infrastructure, but if you can leave just the contact, then we will contact you with this number of calls answer.
Okay, and now as far as Geo Redundancy, will Geo Redundancy be an additional license like CIPRA?
We at the moment still do not have the pricing polished out. There is still time until the final production release. So going forward in these coming almost 2 months, we will be polishing out these and define that in detail, probably most definitely, not probably.
Okay, perfect. Moving along, would swapping of active sites require connectivity to Serverware? So if you lose a connection to Serverware, can you swap via DNS manipulation?
The GRS, or the Geo Redundancy server, is the one that actually manages the takeover, the replication and takeover also. Where you would have the DNS server hosted, that's up to basically that would define on the IP addresses, or actually the DNS handling as well.
Okay, excellent. I'd like to talk about bandwidth a bit. Is there a minimum bandwidth to have geo redundancy working? And can you set one? Can you set one Ethernet to be used for it?
Basically, yes, you can set it, but it's not a requirement. It's not a must. And as for them, yeah, we haven't, as I said, there are increments in the replication. Only increments are basically replicated. So the minimum requirement, I think, we haven't basically reached during our testing any kind of limit or limitation in that regard. Yeah.
Okay, and for going back to failover, will there be any notifications in the event of failover?
Yes, I mean, as I said, so this is something that you set up in the site monitoring tool, where you say, okay, in case this test fails, and you set up the limits on what is failure and what is acceptable behavior. Basically, if you say you would set up, okay, in this case, I want administrator notified. In this case, I want automatic takeover based on this and this template to be executed, and also notify the administrator. So basically, yes, it's possible, but it's flexible for you to configure.
Okay, next question from our guest here. You said that the recovery can be completed if all VPS data is available. Is all the data replicated?
That was just let's say a disclaimer, so that you have to do the replication first.
Okay, great. Moving along here, does the secondary location have to be an exact copy of hardware and capacity as the primary?
No, it doesn't have to be exact copy.
Okay, we have another question.
Just to clarify, but it has to have enough resources to move on with the services in case of a takeover. That's the only disclaimer or limitation, basically, to have enough resources to move on working or upon takeover. Yeah. Sorry, Gerald.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for clarifying there. A question about, can I choose which server is going to be on the master pool? Like, can someone change it on the fly?
I am not sure what you mean by the master. So basically, you would have, let's say you have two clusters, two serverware setups, but let's assume they are clusters. Basically, if you have cluster A in one location, location A, and cluster B in location B, if you can clarify, what do you mean on the master on the pool? So basically, you would have two serverware setups in case of a disaster in one of the, in a location A, for instance, cluster B in location B would be able to take over, if I understand correctly what you meant there. And also to clarify, just to expand on this explanation, let's say it is possible to use it both in you basically set it up. You choose if you would like to use in active-passive setup or in active-active setup, meaning that in case of an active-passive setup, the second one, the cluster B, the location B, is just on standby, waiting for takeover. just accepting data from replications. But in active-active setup, if that is what you choose to use, how to use the serverware and Geo Redundancy, they both actively work. And in case of a failure in one of them, the other one, let's say cluster B, takes over. But again, the requirement is to have enough resources for cluster B to work on its own. I hope I clarified that question. I'm not sure what exactly was meant there.
Thank you for clarifying. And we invite for advanced technical questions, certainly follow up after the presentation. We'll be able to help you further. So next question for Bicom hosted users, where are the locations?
At the moment, we have Cork, London, Pop, and Chicago.
Okay, great. Another question here to clarify, if we use dedicated servers on AWS Cloud, can we use Serverware 4.1?
Again, so Serverware on AWS, it doesn't work at the moment because, as I said, Serverware on its own is a virtualization platform.
Okay, thank you. And can you clarify, do you support active-active configuration or only active-passive configuration?
Yeah, we support both of them. As I said just earlier, it is basically up to you, up to the administrator to decide which setup they want to use. The only, let's say, limitation or requirement, and it's from the logical point of view, is that you need to have enough resources on one cluster to take over and work on its own until the other one, the one that is out of service, is back in service. Yeah, that's the only limitation. And it's, again, this is something for the administrators to decide and set up.
Okay, and do you support v6 PBXware on cloud?
I will have to check that with my colleagues responsible for PBXware and get back to you. If you can just leave your contact, and probably you will get your answer by tomorrow.
Okay, here's another question about active-passive. If you have to flip DNS records in the event of a failover, does that imply that registered SIP endpoints would all have to reboot?
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I couldn't.
For active-passive, if you have to flip DNS records in the event of a failover, does that imply all registered SIP endpoints would have to reboot?
Basically, you would migrate the VPSs to the other cluster in case of active-passive setup. So, yeah, you need to migrate them and start over from there.
Okay. Let's see. Does Serverware allow VPSs to be live migrated on demand to another cluster or cluster node if required? For Windows clustered Hyper-V systems, or can they only fail over? I'm trying to decipher this question here.
Again, if I understand the question correctly, basically, yes, you can migrate the VPSs.
Okay, and we just had another question about, to clarify, what were the hosted physical locations again for our listeners?
Sorry, Cork, London, and Chicago. I hope you could hear me.
Great, thank you. Now, is Serverware going to support CentOS?
Yes, that's also in the works. We have internally tested it, so we will, move on with the alpha and beta testing on that.
Okay, moving along here too. If we use Serverware platform on both sites, can we have the active-active redundancy?
Yes. Again, up to you to decide which setup you would like, active-active or active-passive. Then
okay, and for high availability, would it be recommended to have a mirror edition so failover is automated, and then the Geo Redundant setup for disaster recovery situations?
Mirror, yes, is a high availability solution. I mean, you could have as I said, a mirror edition with any kind of edition, any available edition with GR. So if you would like, to be very sure of your data and business continuity, then yeah, mirror edition with GR would be a solution for you. If you even need more security in that sense, then cluster edition with GR, but it's basically up to you. What are your needs and what are basically your abilities to cover.
All right, I think that should wrap up today's webinar. A big thank you to Patrice and Aida and everyone over at Bicom Systems, and of course to all of you for attending today's event. To access this webinar on demand, please head over to channelvisionmag.com and also keep an eye out for a follow-up email from Channel Vision. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.